Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Dion and today we're doing what everybody else who's in fashion is doing. We're talking about Brandy Melville. Recently, HBO came out with a documentary called Brandy Melville about the brand, and it was pretty scathing. People have been talking about it on TikTok, on Twitter, and obviously on YouTube, and I wanted to get in on the fun. So in this video, we're gonna talk about the brand Brandy Melville. We are going to talk about the documentary. I'm gonna talk a little bit about my personal relationship with the brand, and then just my thoughts in general on what the documentary said and just in general the points that they hit. So if you like fashion content and fashion commentary in general, then definitely make sure to subscribe to my channel because I post videos every Thursday. And with that, let's get into it. Brandy Melville is an Italian clothing brand that markets fast fashion and accessories to teenage girls and young women. Though the company was established in Italy by Silvio Marzan, Brandy Melville gained international popularity by pivoting to a California-based style and American consumers. The retailer controversially makes clothes of only one size, and despite this, Brandy Melville has over 133 stores and has an expanding market in China. The brand was popular in 2010's Tumblr and on beauty gurus on YouTube, epitomizing summer in California with your best friends, going to Coachella, and driving to the beach. The clothing wasn't cheap, but it wasn't too expensive, with crop tops around $15 and accessories starting at $3. They have a carefree minimalist style showcased by their almost bare-looking e-commerce website, and rather than high-resolution model photo shoots, they opt for real girls, the young employees, or the consumers who tag the brand on social media and are honored to be featured on the page. The stores always had lines around the block, and every year there was a new trendy Brandy Melville piece, and anyone who was anyone wore Brandy Melville. So as you can see, it's a pretty cutesy, minimalist, I guess kind of coquettish, very dainty, very feminine, just kind of basic styles. I personally found out about Brandy Melville through beauty gurus like Megan Rinks, Lindsay Hughes, Aspen Ovard, those people would talk about Brandy Melville, and it became such a desirable brand. I remember I begged my dad if I could go on Brandy Melville and get a few things, and I got a bunch of accessories like cross necklaces, and it was mostly just earrings and bracelets and stuff like that because there was never a store around me, and then going to New York, going to the Brandy Melville store was so important. It also was all over Tumblr, so these iconic Tumblr shirts that would have thousands of reblogs would be from Brandy Melville, which made it even more desirable because it just seemed like that's what the cool kids were wearing. Even at that age, I never even bothered to try on their bottoms. I'm tall and I've always been sort of a medium, large bottom, and there was just no chance of me ever fitting into any of their bottoms. I did, or dresses for that matter, but I did wear some of their crop tops just because they were tiny. I have actually a black little crop top that was actually my friend Blair's, but she got it from Brandy Melville and I turned it into a halter top. That's my only Brandy Melville piece. But yeah, the one size fits all thing, I knew long sleeve tops, bottoms, and dresses for me, it just wasn't gonna happen. I could only get accessories or the tops at Brandy Melville. Honestly, a lot of Brandy Melville's energy reminds me of American Apparel 5 years before. American Apparel was definitely more expensive and they carried more than one size, but they also had this very cool kid aspect to the whole brand. You wanted to be an American Apparel girl. And again, beauty gurus, Tumblr, YouTube, all of that, you would see American Apparel things go viral. It also very much reminds me of Abercrombie or Hollister, which are owned by the same person, and how Abercrombie and Hollister's founder explicitly said that he only wants skinny, good-looking people in his clothes, and just the weird practices that Hollister and Abercrombie would do. I remember it was both American Apparel, Hollister, and Abercrombie. All of them would often ask their consumers as they were walking in the store, do you want a job? I remember being recruited for American Apparel, never Brandy Melville. I think once I was recruited for Hollister and I was oh my God, I made it. My dream was to be a Hollister model and to work at Hollister. I feel that was when I was a teenager, so a few years before Brandy Melville. So the it job was like if you got hired to be at Hollister or Abercrombie or American Apparel. Like Hollister and Abercrombie was for like cool, hot, like popular people. American Apparel was for like the cool, artsy people. Like that's, yeah. So it was very desirable to get those jobs, especially as a teenager. And those jobs are very much like based on looks. Like American Apparel would take pictures of you and stuff as a recruiting process, and a lot of their campaigns are very provocative. And Hollister and Abercrombie would have shirtless models. Like somebody that went to my school while he was in high school, so AKA under 18, was one of like the shirtless Hollister employees. So they just like hired underage guys to be shirtless at the mall as their shift. I think that is so weird. I think that is like so yeah, this whole Brandy Melville documentary very much reminds me of Abercrombie, Hollister, and American Apparel. So let's talk about the documentary. Like I said, it's on HBO, which I know is behind a paywall, but I definitely recommend watching it. It was really gross, like hearing about Brandy Melville. I will say, like, quick trigger warning. Talk about like a little bit of sexual content, racism, just like weird behavior. So yeah. Obviously with Brandy's one size fits all policy, like that's already an air of exclusivity, fat phobia. But then the owner was like explicitly against hiring people of color, or they had a big like front of house, back of house hiring process where the front of house girls were skinny, blonde, white, back of house employees were the Black and Hispanic employees. And I suppose when you did walk into a place like Brandy Melville and all the employees look the same, like you just don't think of it as a consumer, but it does make sense. And how they had that same sort of predatory hiring process of scouting consumers that were in there, offering them a job solely based on looks. And again, this is all in the documentary. I'm not alleging anything. So like I said, that sort of hiring practice where you are basically hiring on looks and personal style without seeing a resume or anything is already kind of blurring the lines of discriminatory and like illegal. And the CEO, Stefan Marsan, was sort of the spearhead of all of this weirdness. He even went as far as to say that they need to close down the Brandy Melville in Toronto because too many POC were shopping there, and that he didn't want POC to be wearing his clothes. There was a lot of weird like libertarian indoctrination in the documentary in terms of like, they have a whole like Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged, The Fountainhead references like throughout the brand, which I obviously as a teenager never realized. That is also a very weird thing. One of the weirdest parts of the documentary were the store style photos where every single day, every single employee had to take a picture of their outfit. Sometimes it was only the chest and outfit, and send to the CEO, Stefan Marsan, and he kept all these photos. And these girls are like 16, 17. Obviously they're not explicit, but they're still in crop tops, mini skirts. Like why do you have all those photos? Part of it was for market research, but obviously that's not the only reason. He also would like pay for Ubers for some of his employees to go to a certain like hotel, which is obviously illegal and sketchy. There was a Brandy Melville group chat for all of like the higher ups, like not the lower employees, but the higher ups. Like everyone was on it. That was full of anti-Semitic, racist stuff, like lots of just like really like Nazi level type of stuff. It was really like not just like off-color jokes, like really vile and really horrible in this professional group chat, like text thread. So those were the two of the main things about the Brandy Melville documentary that I feel like most people are talking about, and what kind of gives the most scandal. Obviously, very creepy, very pedo vibes, and obviously fatphobic, racist, and just bad, weird behavior. What I liked about this documentary, because I know that those two things are what's gonna get sort of the scandal, the oh my god, the like craziness, What I liked about the documentary is that they touched on how Brandy Melville is a fast fashion company. Just because it's not Shein level cheap doesn't mean it's not fast fashion. Often we think that the higher the price, the better the quality in manufacturing, but many expensive, even luxury brands operate on a fast fashion model. And that was shown in the documentary, how they would take pictures of girls' clothes, that way they can go and recreate it. They even did a little like factory tour, which was very reminiscent of like the Shein factory tour, to try and see what the girls, the employees, would want to buy themselves, because that was the target audience. And in the documentary of sort of fast fashion, they really tried to emphasize how it's an environmental issue and how it's like a feminist issue. I do think that people are gonna focus on like the gross stuff that Stefan did. Unfortunately, this is a bigger picture in fashion, especially fast fashion, of exploitation of women as an umbrella. I've already mentioned Hollister, Abercrombie, American Apparel, all three, I've witnessed those same exact hiring practices and other weird things that they do with their employees. Those are known things, and they are also fast fashion companies. Those three brands are more expensive than even Brandy, but they still operate on that fast fashion model. They're still exploiting women. So not only are they exploiting their employees, who, especially Brandy Melville, who are all women, and exploiting their naivete, their want for style, their want for notoriety, etc. They're exploiting that and being creepy with it. And then they're exploiting the garment workers, who are majority women. And then they're exploiting women over in places like Ghana or Uganda, where we basically treat it like a clothing landfill, like the crazy colonists that we are. And we just say, here, deal with all of our trash. It's not these friendly donations from the white people of like, here's our clothing. We're literally treating an entire continent like it's a garbage can. Like, that is colonialism, imperialism at its finest. We take the people and use them as workers in garment factories, and then we exploit the land for our little iPhones, and then we exploit the women, the Western women, who just want fashion. I mean, it's a whole umbrella of exploiting women. And most of these companies, Hollister and Abercrombie and Victoria's Secret, are all under a man, Stefan Marzin, a man. Like, these brands are run by men and targeted towards young girls. That should raise a question. Part of the reason why I try to break down aesthetics in general on this is obviously not to promote consumerism, but to shed that silver screen to expose the Wizard of Oz. Most of these aesthetics or brands, what they're selling you, that dream that they're selling you, you can probably already do yourself with the stuff that you have in your own closet. Maybe with a little thrifting or borrowing. I loved at the end of the documentary, all the former Brandy employees were like, why would you not thrift? I only thrift now that I know about fast fashion. Even if the population of Depop resellers tripled, we would still have enough clothing to fill a thrift store and pollute countries overseas. Like, there's enough clothing in this world. There are enough apartments and housing in this world. There is enough food in this world. This scarcity idea is propaganda and a joke that people are trying to sell you, when in reality, governments, corporations, and even individuals are just resource hoarding and acting like there is a scarcity. There's enough food, water, housing, clothing, money for everybody on this planet to live comfortably. But we act like it is a scarcity thing, like these things are a necessity. Again, my whole thing is thrifting and using what you have. In the era of ThredUp, Poshmark, Mercari, all these secondhand sites where it makes it so easy to thrift, and if you don't have a thrift store in your area, it makes it even easier. Because I want to try to help combat this confusion that belonging, this feeling of belonging, comes from purchasing. You can still have like a Matilda Djerf Avenue aesthetic without buying Djerf Avenue. You can still be an office siren without going and buying a bunch of things from Shein. By knowing that you can do it on your own, you take away the power of like predatory advertising and the fast fashion industry as a whole. Fast fashion in general, like continuing my thoughts, sorry about my soapbox, is predatory and addicting. It preys on the dopamine release that you get from buying a new thing, from something getting delivered. That is a dopamine release, and like any dopamine release, you can get addicted to that. And the advertising that makes you feel like if you wear this bra, you'll look like a Victoria's Secret model. If you wear this crop top, you'll be a California carefree Brandy girl. They're using the human need to belong to try to get you to buy things. And in that sense, it is important as an individual to try and fight that addiction, to try to fight the addiction of consumerism, and to try to resist the predatory advertising. It's still gross, but you still have that power to not swipe your card and to try to understand that these brands are trying to sell you a dream. By buying that piece, you're not gonna turn into whatever that dream the brand is selling you. Obviously, federal regulations should exist. The problem with a lot of brands is that they can be centralized in the US and then outsource their factories overseas. I'm not saying that every factory overseas is, unethical. And because that would mean that every factory in the US in-house is ethical, and that is absolutely not true. There's an excellent documentary called The True Cost, actually on YouTube, all about these sweatshops, the slave labor that is happening right here in this country in places like LA. So there does need to be more transparency in factories, maybe a higher tax for manufacturing outside the US. That way we can employ more people in the US and hopefully have better regulations. Again, obviously when it's in the States, it doesn't automatically make it ethical. There are plenty of unethical business practices right here in the United States, but at least it feels like there's a little bit more of a fighting chance.
So not only just federal regulations on where your factories are located and factory practices, but we need legislation and regulations that ensure that corporations are responsible for the lifetime of their product and for every aspect of the product. Because often corporations just make this product and then once it's made, they have nothing to do with it. So all of this waste that is coming from these corporate products, the corporations are like, not my problem anymore. When really, corporations should be responsible for taking back their products, for recycling their own products. They need the personal responsibility that they're trying to employ on all us regular people. Corporations and companies and governments need to take responsibility for their own waste, for their own destruction, because they're just passing on the buck to the consumer.
And obviously upcycling, thrifting, borrowing, learning how to make clothes, rethinking the way we think about fashion that we did like 60 years ago even, during the 40s, 50s, having just a few dresses, just a few suits. You bought less, you wore and you repaired your clothes, you passed it on to your friends, your brothers, or your sisters. More clothing was made, again, in the US, and people made their own clothing just in their own house. So even going back just to that model, not even super far, or reinventing the wheel would help this environmental impact. In regards to the racism in Brandy Melville, this is a persisting thing in fashion that's driven by greed. Branding is everything, and brands like American Apparel, Abercrombie, Victoria's Secret want you to buy the products to hopefully feel included in this cool kids club. And fashion rewards exclusivity, and every company has to have a brand identity that sets them apart and makes people want to buy them. The problem is that they use that principle to be discriminatory, and I don't really know how a governing body can change that, because it's like, oh, well, what's so wrong about having the Victoria's Secret models? We're trying to sell lingerie. Or what's so wrong about only hiring skinny girls? Businesses, I feel like, have a way of kind of looping around those things. I think this is part of the reason why I never wanted to do the clean girl, vanilla girl aesthetic, because both those aesthetics are a lot of Brandy Melville and has that Brandy Melville image of skinny white blonde. And I feel like by almost doing a whole video on those aesthetics, I'm affirming that that's, I don't know, I just don't like it. I don't support it. It gives the same energy as Brandy Melville, this skinny white supremacist energy. With that, I know that was sort of a lot. I want to leave you guys with some resources if you are interested in fast fashion, in the climate change, women's rights in terms of fashion. that will hopefully educate you, but also give you a little hope, provide you some solutions. I know it just feels like, oh, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, but there are more ethical choices we can make. And by educating ourselves, we can empower ourselves and arm ourselves to make those educated choices. So obviously the Brandy Melville documentary on HBO is a great place to start if you want to learn more about the details of Brandy Melville. I would also look into the website Good On You. It's not a perfect system and it's not 100% accurate, but it is a good resource to look at brands and see their ethical and sustainable practices. Most brands will have a page that outlines that, and you can tell if it's word salad BS or if they're actually being transparent with photos, stats. You always want to see a second certification, a third-party certification, because obviously if they're like, this is certified by our in-house eco people, then who's fact-checking that? So something like a B Corp certified Leaping Bunny, there's a lot of certifications that you want to look out for. 1% for the planet, for ocean, 1% of the planet, and B Corp is always things that I like to look for when searching for ethical and sustainable brands. But obviously the solution to this is buying less. If you want to learn more about kind of the colonialism, environmental racism that is happening, A Bigger Picture by Vanessa Nakate is excellent. She's like a young Greta Thunberg, like climate activist from Uganda. It's a short little read and it was really insightful about like the white savior complex of climate justice. Highly recommend that. The True Cost, which is a documentary, you can watch it on YouTube. I watched it in my human rights law class and it was so insightful, and it's crazy that that is happening right here in the United States. The Drawdown by Paul Hawkins is pretty hefty, but it has like 100 climate solutions that can be implemented like today with environmental, economic, people impact everything. It's dense, but if you want to combat that climate anxiety, it feels very empowering to know that we have all these solutions and that these solutions do exist. We just need to implement them. Other climate books that I loved are Braiding Sweetgrass, Gathering Moss, and Nature's Best Hope. I really do think that learning about the climate does help. I also, if you're looking for sustainable fashion inspiration, I've mentioned her a zillion times. That Curly Top / Sustainable Baddie, run by Jasmine Rogers, are both excellent for really funky, cool, sustainable outfit inspiration. Climate Diva is also a great account. Shell Bizzle is great if you want to learn more about sustainability and sustainable living. Remake Our World is great for fashion statistics and keeping up with what is happening in terms of fashion, the climate crisis. Hannah Ruth Zander is a young designer who upcycles vintage lingerie pieces and makes them into new things. Really cool to see her work. Copenhagen Fashion Week has extremely strict regulations on sustainability for their fashion week, so I always like to follow them to know upcoming designers and what more and more they're doing to make the fashion space more sustainable. Amelia / Moose, she runs Evelina Vintage, which is they hand dye old 1930s slips, and she's always wearing really cool vintage clothing. Alexa Sunshine 83, she did a great video on Brandy Melville as well, and she does a lot of thrift hauls and thrift with me's and stuff like that. Mina Lay does a lot of fashion commentary, but she wears a lot of vintage. It's not necessarily sustainability like focused, but she wears a lot of vintage and has a really unique style. So hopefully with those resources, I make you feel empowered. There is a way to make this better. There is a way to prevail and try to be more ethical, try to be more sustainable. No one can be perfect. No one is perfect. And these companies are predatory. So it's not your fault if you fall privy to their predatory practices. I mean, that is their intention, but stay aware, read up on things, and think before you buy things. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know it was a little soapboxy, but what do you guys think about the Brandy Melville documentary? Did you watch it? I hope I at least provided you with some good resources. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram for more content. Definitely subscribe to this channel if you like fashion commentary, because I post videos every Thursday. And if you want even more me, I have a Patreon, 2 new videos every month that will not be going on YouTube. They're gonna be more casual, more vlog style, but I'd love to see you over there. And with that, have a happy day. Bye.